All right, so now that we've talked about early versus late and gotten a little bit of an idea of how the attention mechanism might work, or at least at what point the attention mechanism might work, now I want to return to visual search and talk about it in more detail. So I'm going to give a whole bunch more examples of visual search. So in this case, I think you're looking for the green vertical rectangle. Okay, so here's an example of it. This is a visual search, find the green vertical rectangle. And I'm just going to do a few of these. So this is the first one, second one, third one. Fourth one. Okay, so let's talk about the differences between these. So in this example, there is only one feature difference between the distractors and the target. So the target is a green vertical rectangle, which means that it has two features that describe it, green and vertical. That's what I mean by features. Features are like color, orientation, shape. You know, what are the features of the stimuli you're looking at here? We have two features, orientation, so up or down or horizontal, and then color, red or green. Okay, so in this example, it seems like it's really, really easy for you to find that green rectangle. In fact, as I add more and more red stimuli, the difficulty of this isn't going to get much harder, right? But if we go back to this one and this one, so this is the first one I showed you, and this one is a little bit harder, right? It took a little bit more time to find that green vertical rectangle. But then I went to this one, and then suddenly it took forever. In fact, it's not even on the screen, but you probably searched it for a long time, right? So in this example, right, I don't know, it's just part of my screen is covered up by Zoom, so I'm not sure if it's actually here, but oh yeah, it is down here. See, I couldn't even find it. As I add more and more distractors in this version, where we actually have two features describing or that are necessary to find the target. That is, I need to not only find the green stimuli, but I also need to find the vertical one, right? I need to know that it's both green and vertical. Whereas here, all I needed was green. But now that I have two features, as I add more and more stimuli on the screen, as it gets busier and busier, it's going to take me longer and longer to find it, right? This is like Where's Waldo, where you have all of those other red striped things all over the place that are kind of faking you out. As you add more and more of them, it gets harder and harder to find Waldo. And so this phenomenon where this one is just automatic, extremely quick, doesn't matter how many other items on the screen, it just pops out at you. Compared to this one, I just added one more feature and suddenly it's much more difficult. There's been a lot of research trying to figure out what the difference is between these two and why it might be that our brains are so good at this one and so slow at this one. Okay, so we have names for these. So the one example where you only have one feature difference between the target and the distractors, that's called feature search because there's only one feature. So I only needed green to find it. So if there is one feature that can be used to tell the difference between the target and the distractor, that is called feature search, sometimes also called pop-out search because it kind of pops out at you. And then conjunction search is when you have more than one. So if you have two or more features that you have to use to find the target, that's considered conjunction search. It is a conjunction of multiple features is one way to remember that. So feature, I only needed color, only one feature, but in conjunction search, I needed two. I needed both color and orientation. So I picked out all of the green ones and then I looked through all the green ones and found the vertical one. So I had to do both. Okay, and the differences between these are very stark. Like I was mentioning, if I just showed you feature search and I added more and more red stimuli to the screen, it's not going to make it any harder for you. But in conjunction search, if I add more and more red and green stimuli of different orientations here, it's going to become harder and harder to find that one target. Okay, so if I were to plot this, if I just look at reaction time, how fast do you find the stimuli? I can plot that reaction time in relationship to how many items I have on this screen or how many distractors I add, right? So I could only have 2 items. One is the target and one is a distractor. And then I can add more and more and more distractors to that and see how that affects the reaction time. So this is what we find. So we're looking at both target present and target absent trials. So remember when I was giving you the examples here, one of these, I think maybe this one, did not have the target. So that's what I mean by target absent. So sometimes the target is there, sometimes it's not, and you're asking the participant to tell you whether it's there or not. Kind of like the Sternberg paradigm that we talked about at the beginning in methods. And so if I increase the number of items or the number of distractors on the screen, the reaction time remains the same for both target present and target absent, right? It doesn't matter how many more red things I add to the screen, that green one is just gonna pop out at me. And so this is something that we call parallel search because we're doing the entire screen all at once, right? We don't have to move our eyes at all, nothing like that. We just attend to the screen and just bam, it pops out. It doesn't matter how many more red items I have on the screen. It's fast, right? It's really, really easy to do no matter what. Whereas in the conjunction search, as I increase the number of items on the screen, I get slower and slower. It gets harder and harder to find that target as I add more green horizontal and red vertical and horizontal bars to the screen. So it's kind of like Where's Waldo? You know, the first example I gave was smaller, there's not that much going on, but in the bigger one, it takes you forever to find him, right? So as I add more and more stuff to the image, more and more distractors, it takes me longer and longer to find Waldo. It takes me longer and longer to find the target that I've been given. And then we do have a difference between target present and target absent. So the target present is a little bit shallower of a slope than the target absent trials. And that's because once you find the stimuli, you can stop, right? So let's say I just have a tactic that I'm going to search from the left to the right, because that's how I read. So maybe I'm searching the top ones, I'm searching, I find it over here, and then I stop. I don't have to search the ones along the bottom at all. Okay, so the idea here is that yes, the time in which it takes me to find it is going to increase as I add more and more distractors, but that's not going to be nearly as bad as it is when the target isn't there, right? If I show you this again, it takes you a long time to search through all of these before you're sure that it's not there, right? Before you can press the button, it's definitely absent, right? You basically have to look at all of the green ones to make sure none of them are vertical. Okay, and so that's why we see a difference between the reaction time slopes here, where if it's absent, I have to search all of them, which is going to slow me down. Okay, so if you remember back to the Sternberg paradigm, in this case, the feature search is parallel. So it doesn't matter how many extra stimuli I add, it's all parallel. Conjunction search is serial and self-terminating. As in, once I find the item, I will terminate, I will press the button, and I'll stop. Whereas in the Sternberg paradigm, remember this is searching the letters in working memory, that was exhaustive. So it doesn't matter whether the target was there or not, I would search all of the items in memory. In this case, in conjunction search, it is self-terminating. I terminate, I press the button once I find it, and so it is a different reaction time between target present and target absent trials. Anyway, so the biggest interest here, the thing that we're going to try and answer is why. Why is it that if I only have one feature, it's so easy, it just pops out at me. But if I add just one more feature, right, I add just orientation to the color, then suddenly it's much harder. Then suddenly it takes me forever to find it. Just the addition of one extra feature. And so that's what a lot of research has gone into trying to figure out why we can do it that way. Okay, I just have some more examples. These are the, okay. So the next video I'm going to talk about is the reason why. Why is there this difference between the two?